don't want to kind of, okay, so if you don't, don't want to appear, then just, type in your questions in the chat um, or just, turn off your video. So, um, so my thought, um, um, about was that there has been dramatic changes in, father's role in the lives of their children. Back in 1982, only 43% of fathers had never changed a diaper. By 2000, that number had dropped down to 3%. So, I mean, if that isn't a great measure of kind of the involvement of fatherhood, I don't know what is. Um, but then on a on another front, there's been a dramatic increase in the brain changes that occur during pregnancy. And so, of course, the initial attention on that was faced on moms. And the idea, what's evolved is these brain changes that occur in the maternal brain serve to make you primed to be aware of all things infant. It primes you to be hyper aware of infant signals and the like. And interestingly, through experience, men's brains can change in exactly the same way. So, um, and there's functionally very little difference, and the changes in our brain also occur in with the kind of the hormones such as a rise in oxytocin and pitocin and the like. So to have this discussion, we have a awesome collection of um, experts here. Um, um, Evan Shopper is a local therapist who specializes in children. He has a website, Deep Dive Parenting, where he writes about the challenges fathers face and many topics in kind of child development and communicating with children. Evan, I wonder if you could just say a few other words about you, about yourself.
Sure. So again, my name's Evan Shopper, and so I have a small private practice in Amherst, and I see a lot of kids, as well as families and adults as well. But before I became a therapist, I was a dad, and my experience with being a dad was to share the parenthood equally with my partner, a woman. And it was extremely important to us. And I found myself most of the time, especially when I had an infant, my first kid, I was in these play groups and I was the only guy there. And that happened repeatedly. Um, and I was mostly, it was very isolating, at least in terms of like finding other fathers, because there just really weren't any. And when I came, this is out on the West Coast, and when I moved to Amherst, I actually started a men's group. Sounds a little bit similar to Gabe and Aaron and Kairos. And there was about a dozen of us at the Amherst Family Center for a few years, and it sort of like fizzled out. I think it's fantastic. You guys have not fizzled whatsoever, it sounds. So I've been really very interested in how men stay involved and get involved with parenting. And I was also part of it's like a research study through two professors at Smith of how to keep men involved, especially considering these. Let me back up as parents who are co-parenting, but not necessarily as a couple, and how to strengthen the co-parenting relationship so that men would stay more involved with their children. And so this was more looking at culturally, racially diverse, socioeconomically diverse families with parents tended to be young and the kids were all young. And it was a great research project, and it sort of informed a lot of what I do as a therapist. And I'm especially interested in continuing to work with young families, especially men, and trying to help them feel that they are not a secondary parent, but also a primary parent. So that's the quick and dirty about me, where I come from.
It's great. Gabe, tell us about yourself and and I guess you and Aaron kind of collaborating on the kind of your group together. So yeah, tell us about that a little bit, please.
Thanks, Ted. Hi, everybody. My name's Gabe Reef. I use he, him pronouns. I I became a dad 13 years ago, and I had big visions and plans to be a really committed, awesome parent, and found it really hard, and struggled with isolation, like Evan said, loss of identity and hobbies, depression, all these, feeling like this anger and irritability in me that I hadn't encountered before, and I felt very alone, and it I felt very alone, and so I decided to start a dad's group. A peer support. I reached out to a dozen other dads that I knew in the area. At the time, my daughter was 4, and so dads who I live in Amherst, so other dads who had kids of similar ages, and we came together. And now we've been meeting for 9.5 years in that group. It has completely changed my life. I have a group of 10 dads who know me really well, who support me, and we have talked about every topic imaginable. A lot of it, it's been really interesting to see how over the years our topics have changed, from changing diapers and nap times to toddler tantrums in elementary school. And now we're dealing more with like members of our group getting sick, or dealing, or having aging parents. So it's turned into way more than I ever could have dreamed of. More recently, Aaron, who will introduce himself in a moment, and I started an online dad support group called the Nurturing Dads Network. And that has been incredibly fruitful. It has it's shown to me that just kind of like the model that has worked so well for the dads group that I've been doing for all these years is so easy to carry over into other groups, and how quickly dads form this synergy of like, oh my gosh, you're going through that stuff, I am too. The ability to help and support one another is really special. So that's really what brings me here, and hopefully can impart some wisdom as a seasoned father who is very passionate about fatherhood and being a dad, and let people in attendance know about some of the resources that are out there.
Right. Great. Great. Aaron, would you have a few words to add?
Sure. Gabe, as usual, said it really well. I'll just add that I started off going to the group that Gabe had started, which Hyro was a part of. So I want to hear from Hyro too, of course, about that. And I was basically like, this is awesome. Let's make another one. So we created the online group, and our goal was really accessibility. We know that not everybody can go to stuff in person, and hours are tough if you're parenting and working. And so it's cool. We all talk and we're on Zoom, and some of the dads are doing dishes, and some of them are folding laundry, and some of them have to mute because they're screaming next room. So we have a sliding scale so that hopefully finances are not a barrier to anyone, and we meet online again to try to keep it accessible. And like Gabe said, it's pretty cool once you get guys, especially dads, talking. It does not take long to realize you're not the only one. And it feels really good when you realize that too. Um, yeah, and I'll just add about myself. So when I'm not doing the dad's group, I'm a career coach and a life coach. I have a background in education. I was a high school teacher for many years. My son is 10 years old in fourth grade. We live in Florence. And I became a dad while I was living in New Mexico, in a very rural part of New Mexico. And so I was really isolated. I had very few other people, very few other people. It was really rural. Um, and I came back here to visit one summer and I went to Forbes Library, the kids section of the library in Northampton. And I saw all these other dads with their kids, and I was like, oh, like I didn't realize I felt so alone. And for me, and I think a theme in the group, at least for a lot of the guys, is I know I want to do this differently than how I was raised, but I don't really know how. And so we could talk more about that.
Great.
So yeah, that's me. Thank you. I guess I'll pass it over to Hyro.
Yeah, so
Great. Thanks very much, Aaron. So pleasure to meet you guys. My name's Hyra Lopez. I use they, them pronouns. Uh, I have a son. His name is Finn. He's 9 years old. And I became a parent when I was 19. I was still going to UMass Amherst for my undergraduates. And me and mom separated within a year of Finn's birth. And we've been in a co-parenting relationship ever since. Around this time, I did hear about dad's groups. There was, I now know one of those was the same group that I'm a part of now that I didn't join until years later. And one of those must have been yours as well, Evan. But at that time, as an undergraduate in going into my junior year, needing to really hold down finances and everything else, I was like, I don't have time for this. The isolation was hard. It was very, very difficult. But I came from a background of not having a father who just kind of dropped out of the picture very early, couldn't follow up with anything, and then was gone from my life forever, kind of thing. Um, and I knew hard that that's not what I wanted for my son. I wanted to be there for him no matter what, no matter how difficult it was, because I had the time, I had the space, and I had the mental capacity, and I knew I could do it. So I pushed hard. Um, and Up until like when Finn was like 5 or 6, like some of my closer friends started having kids. And I started getting a lot of those, hey, you've been a dad for a while. What are your thoughts on this? And I loved sharing my experiences and connecting with these other newer dads. And then joining Gabe's group of dads. I joined them not at their onset like 10 years ago. It's been only about 2 years since I've been with them. And even in those 2 years, it's been a massive change in how I perceive things with my own child and the struggles that I see. We have kids who have gone through the same age range as him. We have kids with similar thought processes and even mental struggles. Um, but it's been massive. The isolation has felt really lifted. Like I feel much more open with so much of what I've experienced and what I continue to experience. And I can't explain enough how important it is to have that community and have those people that you can talk to about your experiences as a parent. Um, so yeah, I did mention that I do co-parent. It was really difficult when I was younger. Like it was very adversarial, and there was a lot to go through with that process. And I'm more than happy to say that this has gotten to such a better place now. It's not perfect, of course. There's disagreements in any co-parenting relationship, but we can communicate, and that is huge. And it took a lot to get there.
great, fantastic. So, one of my, yeah, I'm a parent also, and I can remember bringing my daughter when she was, a tiny little infant to nap for pediatric care. And the receptionist there looked at me and said, "Oh, you are such a wonderful dad." And I thought to myself, well, that's very sweet of you to say that, but I'm just kind of showing up with my kid for, to have her ears checked. And I'm getting kind of commended like I'm something kind of awesome. And I thought, like, I'm not telling my wife about this comment. No, 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 no. I think that um, what it means to be a father, the bar has sometimes been set low or been, well, let's say sometimes set low or what people view us, has um, gone through all sorts of permutations. But I thought, just before kind of launching into kind of discussion, kind of more proper, I thought I would just show a brief video clip of a comedian, Michael Jr., about his daughter, just simply to kind of make the point that dads can be just as nurturing and effective with newborns as moms. And Jen, could you show that kind of clip? If you're,
Yep, let me get it started. Hold on. Let me know if you cannot hear it. You should be able to, but let me know if you can't.
Comedian Michael Jr. here. As you know, I just flat out enjoy doing comedy. But one of the things I love way more than that is being a dad. Not too long ago, I'm going through some video footage.
I can't hear him.
It was playing, but
We're in the hospital room.
Now I can.
Sticky, and she's
Are you not hearing it?
I lost him for a moment. Now he's back.
Okay.
baby and all that stuff, and she's in the middle of crying. And then I speak up. I start talking to her, and watch her voice.
Jen, at least for me, I keep losing the
It's okay.
sound.
It's okay. Right here. I'm right here. You're doing just fine. It's okay. Okay, I'm right here. Right here. Yeah. Okay. Okay, baby. That was pretty awesome. So check it. A few minutes later, the nurse starts working on her, puts her pamper on her, and I'm not saying anything, and she actually starts to cry again. Then I speak up, she hears my voice and stops crying, like again. But I want you to notice what else happens after I tell her that I love her. Portland, okay. Okay, it's good, it's good, it's good. I'm right here, I'm right here. I am right here. Love you, love you, love you. Yeah, I'm right here, I'm right here. It's okay, it's okay. That's just phenomenal. I'm like, whoa. Here's the thing. We'll always have times where we're not as comfortable, probably even to the point of tears, where life is just heavy. The key thing to do in those moments is to be still and listen for the Father's voice, because He is trying to talk to you. And I can tell you what He wants you to know is that He loves you. All you got to do is open your eyes. Happy Father's Day.
well, I'm sorry, the audio wasn't kind of better, but it was pretty kind of dramatic as he started talking. The little girl began to kind of quiet. And, in fairness, also, it's not just him as a father. He has an unusual infant. because I think that is very, kind of responsive. But the point remains that you know, it's not just moms who can be nurturing to little pumpkins, but dads can as well. So so Haro, I wonder if we could kind of just start with you, kind of describing a little bit of your kind of voyage becoming a kind of a parent and how you were able to do that and with a father who was absent. But I wonder if you could just kind of describe a little bit of your voyage becoming a parent and um,
Absolutely, but it
Uh,
looks like Aaron has a comment.
oh yeah, I'm
Thanks,
sorry.
Hyra. I really want to hear your answer. But Dr. Plimpton, I was wondering if we could maybe open it up to Jesse and Sunny and Fidel just to hear anything about them or what they're looking for,
Oh,
or if you plan to do that
oh
later,
yeah,
of
no, I think
course,
it's a
whatever you think.
you are a good group facilitator. Right. So but yeah, absolutely. Jesse, would you have any kind of comments or things that you'd like to talk about or not? Mm. Or if you do, just, put a
Hello,
comment. Yeah. No, you're okay.
here. There we go.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hi there.
Uh, I've been part of men's groups a few times and I've always kind of wanted to connect with the other dads in those groups. And so that's just one topic or aspect of things that I find interesting about this and maybe sort of explore the difference there.
Great. Good. Thank you.
And this is
Um,
one of three I've got here.
oh, and how old is this one?
He's 2.5 and 5.5 and almost 7.
You are in the high demand phase of parenting, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for doing this. I'll be
Yeah.
listening in.
Great. Fidel, would you have any kind of comments or
Yeah.
things that you'd like us to talk about or?
Well, I don't really know what to expect or what's gonna happen today. I just I saw the flyer at the nap when I would take the kid in last week, and I moved out here from Las Vegas 5 years ago, where I had a stronger community of men who were I was surrounded with. Moving out here in my early 40s has been a little bit more difficult to connect with other men. But just kind of thought I'd jump in and see what the meeting was about or what the outcome would be.
Great. And how old are you? May I ask how old your children are?
Yeah, my little one is 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah, he's a handful, but it's our first, and we're just diving right into it. So it's been great.
You don't look at all sleep deprived.
No, about 3 weeks ago, he started sleeping through the night. His last bottle is like between 7 and 8, and then he'll wake up till like 4 or 5 the next morning. So he's doing pretty good so far. We thought we were gonna go through the 4 month regression, and I don't think that happened. I mean, we got to put his passy every once in a while, a couple times, but other than that, I think he's a champion and he's fighting right through it.
Oh, great. Well, I'm delighted you could drop in. Sony, would you
Yeah, sure. My name is Sunny. Yeah, I'm going to be a parent. My wife we're hitting 22 weeks, for our first, baby. And we just found out it's a girl. Very excited. Also just very nervous and curious. I've always been interested in like trying to find male spaces. So I thought this might be something to check out.
Right. Well, that's very exciting. That's very exciting. I hope things are going well.
Yeah, so far so good. A lot going on, but it's been very exciting.
Great. 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 So thank you, Aaron, for that suggestion. So, okay. So Hira, maybe you could just kind of jump in a little bit and just tell us about your voyage.
Of course, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you as well. And yeah, I'd love to share some thoughts and some background. So I'm some background on my own parenting experience. I lived with a single mother and my brother. We were Central American immigrants. I was born here in the United States, and it was a pretty isolated way to grow up as well. My mom was not a native English speaker, so me and my brother helped do a lot of translating and work with her, like being raised in a new country. And first generation American, we had a lot of pressure to succeed. And that was very big for me. No male role model there, but a lot of people along the way as I was growing up cheering me on, like recognizing any difficulty that I had. And if I asked for help, I usually found it. And I knew that that was a thing that I could do. Um, as I approached parenthood, I was in college, right? Like it's as an undergraduate, you already have a lot on your plate, and becoming a father is so much. It's so much surprise and so much shock. And I knew that not only like I could ask for help, but most importantly, I had to also find my way. I could get advice, but no one was going to do it for me. So a lot of the steps that I took were simply research, talking, going to any sort of groups that were being offered at the hospitals as we came in for any visits, seeing any flyers and picking those up, and talking along and getting as much information as I could. Um, as Kiddo was born, I did everything I possibly could to be involved, changing diapers, spending time with just eye contact, talking, making those meals and sitting with him with those meals. All of those little things, even how little they seem, are huge for how you bond to your child. And I felt that immediately. Um, I continued it, and it was, I think, the most difficult part of my journey as a parent was after around that 1 year mark was separating. Um, we stayed in the same space for a bit of time, but we moved apart, and having a separate time away from that child was really, really difficult. Um, but it also meant to me that the time that I had was even more valuable. Um, so, with everything I possibly could, I tried to balance my schedules and spend as much time as I possibly could with my kid. And I feel like that reflects on how our relationship is now. We're really, really close. We love to do as many activities as we can together. And just this last week with spring break, I took a week off and we had so many wonderful experiences together. And I continue trying to do that with him. Um, and yeah, one of I feel like early parenthood difficulty was that separation. And I can speak a lot about that, but we have quite a group here that is together and connected. And hope separation is not something that people have to face, but if it's a difficulty that you find, you're not alone, right? It's an experience that other people have had, and I've been able to communicate about it as well. Um, Being a parent has been the biggest change in my life and continues to be one of my biggest and largest motivating factors in my life to continue to not only better myself but better my son's life as well.
Have you been kind of just in any way surprised about what it's like to be a dad?
Mm. um, low on surprises. I knew the difficulty was right there as it started, but so many little jumps of surprises. Growth happens in predictable stages, but can happen very sharply. And especially in those first 2 years, in a week's time, you'll see a big jump in personality. You see a big jump in their habitual behaviors. And uh, again, modeled and predictable from a lot of the things that I read, but every child is unique as well. Um, it's been a wonderful experience, and wildly not so surprising.
Yeah, okay, great. Um, you know, we all as kind of dads in some ways, in varying ways, want to do some things the same as our own fathers did with us. In some ways, do things kind of kind of differently. I think it's sort of back, or be the father that, kind of we never have. Evan, you've written about this kind of, issue in, very eloquently in your, on your webpage
Yeah,
and I wonder if you could kind of just comment on this issue
sure.
of how, um, how do you, do things differently?
How do you do it? Yeah, especially if you feel like you didn't have a role model. And I also just want to, something that Ira, you were saying, or actually, Ted, you asked, what is it like? Any surprises being a dad? And how is that different than a surprise as being a parent versus a father?
Mhm.
And I think that as we're talking about all this, it's informed by being male identified and whatever goes with that versus being, gender fluid or female or whatever. But how is this specific to like being male and called a father, right? And because I think that puts so much expectation and weird pressure on parents who are male identified. And so I just want to sort of frame this, and I'll get back to what you were saying, Ted. But
No,
isn't
no,
that
this
why
is
we're all here?
it's a very, it's a complicated kind of issue, in this day and age. In
That's right.
terms of, and we're really talking about, I mean, for this discussion, whether you're a cisgendered male, a gay male,
Right.
or a trans male, um, we're all of us.
But we're working with and against how everyone perceives us. And if someone perceives you as a male parent, male looking, identified, whatever parent, and they're a father, it comes at us with all these presuppositions, all these expectations of who we are or who we're not. And so maybe I'll come back to that, but I think that's sort of why we're here to some degree of
Yes.
how do we work with fatherhood? We're not talking about parenthood per se. We're talking about being fathers. So anyway, so how do we be a father when we don't have a father? And that was something that I think there's a lot of male identified parents out there who didn't have much of a father figure. And the idea of like, how do I do it if no one taught me how to do it? And this is, I have a website, it's called deepdiveparenting.com. And as one of the pieces of it, I wanted there to be a section for dads because there's just nothing out there. There's so little out there online. There's all these moms groups and mama this, mama that, and there's hardly anything for fathers. I'm like, I'm not going to be part of that. I'm going to have at least something towards fathers. And I think it's, how to do it. First of all, I think all of us have an idea of what we want to be as a parent, whether that makes us a father or a parent. It's I want to be this kind of parent, and um, and things that we want to do the same or do different. And that's not just in the absence of having a father, but all the ideas of what it means to be a father and what it means to be male and what does it mean to be so-called masculine. And I think in the end, we're all making choices based on how we grew up or how we wish we had grown up. And part of, I think, what the solution is we have to father ourselves in a way. And the post goes into more detail of what I mean by fathering ourselves, because I think it's a little bit more complicated. Like there's the adult part of us, and there's also a child part of us that we always carry. And the child part is all our memories and everything that triggers us, and we get pulled back into old ways of doing things. And the child part of us may say, this is what it means to be male, it means to be absent. And we may want to push against that. But I think one of the complicating pieces is that a lot of society tells us that we're secondary parents. I mean, I heard someone tell me, "Oh, are you babysitting today?" when I was out with my infant. "Oh, are you Mr. Mom?" And it pissed me off, because it's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm the kid's fucking father. It made me so mad. But of course you can't say that, because they're just joking and it's not funny to you at all. But it's still a kind of it's like a microaggression. It's a small assault against being a father. And so we're working against that. And I think part of fathering yourself, I'm sort of there's a bunch of things I'm trying to talk at the same time. I think we get told often that we're secondary parents, which means that we're going to fail. And if we feel like we're failing, and all parents feel like they're failing a lot, that's just the normal way of being as a parent. But I think the danger for men is that men aren't allowed to fail. That gets wrapped up in masculinity. And Jairo, you said, I want to ask for help. And I thought, oh my God, that's great, because so much of machoism and maleness gets caught up in, like, I'm not going to ask for help. I know how to do it. I'm a man. Be a man. And it's like, that's ridiculous. So ask for help. But I think a lot of men fall into the trap of, I feel like I'm failing, because all parents fail at times, but then they feel that they're the failure, just like their father was a failure because their father didn't show up. And that's where men run the risk of checking out and pulling back and saying, well, everyone's treating me like a secondary parent. Fine, I'll be a secondary parent. And so I'm trying to pull this all together, but does that sort of answer the question of, like, trying to parent in the absence of a father?
I think what you're saying is great.
Let me just put it this way. We were all raised or not raised by parents that in ways that worked and didn't work. And we're going to try to be the best parent we can. And that means emulating certain things and trying to repeat certain things, and then trying not to repeat certain things. The danger here is that oftentimes when we feel that we suffered in some way or didn't get something, we do the exact opposite. We go the other direction. And that's where we run the risk of going too far in the opposite direction. And I would just say that it's helpful to be aware of that, because we tend to overreact when we try to adjust for something that we didn't get or we got too much of. And anywhere in this area is fine, but we should be careful in trying to correct, because sometimes we overcorrect. And this gets caught up in being male and masculine and what that means or what it doesn't mean. I don't know. I'm curious what Gabe and Aaron and Ira, what you've seen in your groups, especially the men's groups, and talking about, I'm sure you're talking about what it means to be male and masculine and a father and versus a parent. And what are you seeing? What are dads dealing with?
I'm interested too.
I'd love to chime in real quick. So growing up without a father, was growing up with my mom. And I feel like a lot of motherhood advice that I've seen has been a lot of nurturing, care, listening, support. Um, that's not exactly the way that my mom rolled. She was very harsh and strict. And it was, you have a problem, figure it out, mostly. Like there would be certain things where she would step in, but it was usually try to solve your own problems. Um, and uh, this is often what I also see from males in general. Like it's very much like pull like an often rhetoric I hear from males is like to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like really work hard and you'll get it kind of deal. And one thing that I hear a lot in just general feedback with how I interact with my kid is how I listen to him, how we are able to have a conversation when he feels things. And um, I am a very male presenting person, but I like my they them pronouns, and it feels uncomfortable to be directed with heavy masculinity with how I just approach and exist in general space. But perception of others is it is an influencing factor on how you act and behave. Um, so with all of this, I do have a lean towards a lot of nurture, support, and care with what I do for Finn, but also try to balance that with, hey, you have some problems. Like this is one that you should try to think through and have some self-reflection afterwards. And again, always a balancing effort. I'm never perfect. Sometimes I wish I nurtured when I was strict. Sometimes I wish I was stricter when I nurtured, but it's all in that reflection more than just correct one way or the other.
Yeah. And that balance is when we're always struggling in terms of how much to kind of protect and how much to kind of nurture and how much to um, let them trial and find out. So, like Evan, um, I would really be interested in kind of Aaron and Gabe's kind of comments about these issues and the kind of the issue of, being a father and what it means to be masculine, or even if that's a relevant kind of thing to be asking, curiously.
Yep. Gabe, do you want to start? Okay. First, hello to the folks we didn't get to properly meet in the beginning. We're glad to have some other people join. I see it looks like Cheryl and Jan. Yeah. So Dr. Plimpton had said this is a participatory conversation, so by all means jump in if you all have something you want to add or you have questions for us. We're really here to support you all. So hey Jan. Um, so yeah, to speak to the question about masculinity and what's coming up in the group, um, well, everything I've heard so far has sparked like a million things I wanna like I'm thinking so much about me being a dad, how my dad was with me. I just have a million thoughts. So I appreciate what everybody's sharing. I'll say something that's been a bit of a theme in our group has been anger. It feels like the kind of short version is dads get angry, dads feel like they're not supposed to be angry or not allowed to be angry. They don't want to be how their dad was when he was angry. And then we don't know what to do. It's like some people are kind of like stuffing it down, and or you bottle it up too much, and then maybe you do explode in the way that is exactly what you're trying to avoid, kind of like Evan was saying, like the pendulum swings too far to the other side. So yeah, anger and like kind of being honest about it and then figuring out what you want to do about that. That's been a big thing. And with masculinity as a social construct, because of course masculinity means different things at different times and places in the world. So um it's not set in stone like we might think if we grow up watching action movies or all the other places we soak up the sort of messaging about what is and isn't what a man should do. um I was really prepared to raise our kid with like a very kind of open horizon. Like, what do you think it means to be a man? How do you want to be? There's no such thing as girl colors and boy colors. He was not into that. He was like, I'm a boy. I want to play with trucks. I hate things that are beautiful. I remember him saying that. It broke my heart when he was in preschool. And he seemed to have a lot of anxiety about not being. It started so freaking early, you guys. He was like 3, and it was coming up. It broke my heart. I really one of the classic parenting things. Like I thought it'd be different. I thought I could fix it, right? And I had to be so flexible and adapt so much, and so um and I found it's really important. And full disclosure, Dr. Plimpton helped with this and my son. Um, if we didn't let him play something out, it would backfire and he would fixate on it and obsess on it. So, like, we didn't allow guns when other kids his age were playing with Nerf guns and stuff, like maybe 4 years old, 5 years old. Big mistake. It was all he could think about. um, for instance. And so I was always trying to channel it, let's do some martial arts, let's do like he was super into guns. So I was like, let's talk about hunting and how that's a way to get food and all this stuff. We've had a lot of like being a dad has looked a lot more macho in my household than I planned for it to. Like we're fishing and we're doing push-ups and we're you know, doing archery in the backyard, and he's reading books about World War II. He loves World War II. And I've learned for him at least, I've gotta let that play out. Um, yeah, I'll go with that.
Aaron, I'll build off what you said. I really love the way you brought the mixture of like your and like what you expected as a dad and your like your intense heading in versus then the child you had and like the intersection of those things. And for those of you who weren't joined at the beginning, Aaron and I and Hyra's member, we're all part of dad support groups. And I find that our dad support groups are a great place where I can explore those intersections with other dads and talk about my frustration or my disappointment or strategize and just kind of be like and get some checks from people because when I felt alone as a parent and trying to like make all these decisions by myself. And yeah, sure, I had my spouse, but we often didn't have time to be sitting down and having these conversations. But in my dad's groups provided me with this outlet and not the perspective of not just one other person that I was like in this, like really intense co-parenting experience with, but with a group of a bunch of other dads who could talk about their kids and talk about their approaches and help to kind of open my eyes to different ideas, help me through the things that I was struggling with and try to like chart a clearer course forward that worked best for my kid and who she was and what my values were and my family and my spouse, and just kind of like all while again just kind of like normalizing the way that I was feeling. Aaron, anger was what I was going to talk about. So again, just like normalizing, like, yeah, I do feel angry. Yeah, we all feel angry. Yeah, we all don't know what to do with that. Yeah, we're all struggling. So I know we have a couple new dads and expecting dads in the group. So one thing that I'll say is that, like, parenting is the journey of a lifetime, and it's going to take so many different shapes and forms. And I've been through, like, as my kid has gone through all the stages of her 13 years, I'm going through a different stage as well. Parenting my kid in every one of her developmental stages is different for me, and presses different buttons for me and suits different strengths for me. But whatever it is, wherever she's at and wherever I'm at, having some kind of space where I can get advice and get support and be vulnerable and have, talk about whatever I needed to talk about so I can be the dad that I want to be, has always been really important to me.
Yeah, Aaron. Oh,
You forgot a big theme. Um, Sacrificing yourself, not taking care of yourself, being like a martyr, or just not knowing that you have limits, and then oops, I went past them. And for me, like, I'll get headaches, I'll get, all the kinds of stuff. And it took me years of parenting. I'm still learning how to say, like, oh, I actually have things that I need. I actually can't run on no sleep. I actually can't, because kind of like I think it was Evan was saying before, like, men are taught, like, you don't fail. You always, whether you're like the rock of the family or all that kind of thing. It's so much social messaging about masculinity. And yeah, I know there's some uh, people who study this kind of thing who suggest that to some extent, all male identified or male presenting children, on some level, it's like we're all taught that we're going to have to go out and sacrifice ourselves. It's almost like this war narrative. Like, you got to be a soldier, whether it's to be like making a lot of money for your family, or like literally, yeah, if there's a war, it's the men who are going to feel it the most. And so I think a lot of dads, myself included, had this, like, we had swallowed this deep concept of like must do all, can't, I have no needs of my own. And I've learned that's really not true. So yeah.
well, in fairness, I think that's been kind of a dilemma for moms and dads in our society that does so little to kind of support young families, that you're supposed to be ideally always available to your child, and without kind of exception. And you're not supposed to have ambivalent feelings. And none of those are very practical. It's, kind of normal and expectable to have ambivalent feelings. And this notion that you're supposed to be, always available, is not realistic. And as you're pointing out, Aaron, it's, we have to nurture the nurturers. Um, our emotional availability is our greatest asset, as parents. And as parents, we're in a peculiar position because under stress, the stress of parenting, our biological response is fight or flight or freeze. And if you're a parent, those just aren't realistic options. You can't, and that's why, all that mindfulness stuff is not, just pure hoo-ha, but, has a lot to kind of say for itself. Um, it, so, I would, be curious your thoughts about, how you how you guys kind of developed your intuitions as a parent. How you got confidence in following your instincts, and because it isn't always kind of a given, and we've got essentially no models. I mean, for me, I was immersed in the kind of field of child development well before becoming a parent, and well, I felt kind of clueless as a young parent, even though I knew a lot. So I'd be curious about your thoughts about that. I mean, I have some as well. Well, one thing I'll just say is, for me, having time alone with my children was kind of critical. So having the opportunity to kind of get things wrong and to kind of screw up, or to have them really struggling and having kind of temper tantrums and stuff like that, and not having the option of being able to default to anybody else, but just having to kind of figure it out on myself, was incredibly important for me in terms of learning to kind of develop my sense of the situation, as well as for my two children, learning that we could struggle and we could work it through and we could kind of get at the other end. It was important to have those live experiences, just as a learning experience, and to have a sense that, yeah, we can figure this out. And I think that becomes important in certain situations, such as I think often dads can be better at putting children to sleep than moms. I think that dads can be better at dropping off their children at school than moms. I think it's not having the same biological connection, I think curiously can be an asset. And then curiously, because there's a certain way we may not be as attuned or attuned in a different way, that can actually work to our advantage and to our child's advantage. And because often, we just kind of do things differently. I think that even just by being kind of more physical with our children than typically the moms would be, can be incredibly helpful in learning all sorts of things. Yeah. So.
Ted, I'll build off. You asked about parental instincts, and I feel very blessed. My mom was an amazing parent, and I feel like I picked up so much on what it means to be nurturing and patient and creative and problem solving. I grew up in a very safe and loving home and environment, and that gave me a lot of what I needed to guide my parenting philosophy. One thing that I've seen in the dads groups that I've led is, again, thinking about where our individual styles meets the personalities of our kids, because sometimes the parent that we envision ourselves being, or the parenting style that we have, isn't going to meet our child. I think about some parents in our groups, kids, between the ages of 4 or 12, like 4 to 12, and having kids who are neurodivergent, kids who, a parent might come in and be like, oh yeah, these are the approaches that I'm going to use. This is what my playbook's going to be. I'm ready for this. And then they have a kid whose behavior, they're wired very differently than a lot of other people are. And any preparation they might have felt, heading in, as their kid develops, and the parent might be like, wow, you know, like there's that a lot of the tricks that they had picked up from one place or another, or their plans or their parenting style might not be a great fit for their kid, and they might have to throw out the entire playbook that they had coming in and develop not only a new playbook, but also just like again, you know, oftentimes the systems in our world aren't built for neurodivergent kids, and so these kids are going through a lot of struggles at school and in social spaces, and so like being a parent to kids who are neurodivergent or have other challenges, again, there's it can be a big challenge, and that's definitely a theme that I've seen in you know, dads struggling in our groups. And again, a dad's group is a place where you can just kind of explain what you're going through and have other dads who, even if you don't have solutions, can just empathize and be there with you and take it, you know, one meeting at a time with you and provide you with guidance or just support and care, and like you've got this attitude, and it's true, because you know, over time, if you're a dedicated dad, that dedication, that patience, and that care it's going to work out. You know, it's going to if whatever struggles you're going through will get easier. And so a lot of it is patience, and a lot of it is having people to support you through those challenges.
Can I just leapfrog off that, Gabe? Because I think also what Aaron, you were describing in terms of you had this boy who hates all things beautiful, and it just gets you at the core. But I think that parenting is always going to involve that, where our kid is just wired differently than we necessarily want them to be wired, or they're just different than we expect or we want. And so there's a kind of a loss that comes with that of this is my hopes and dreams for my kid, but I'm not going to get that, and I'm not going to be able to be that kind of parent that I envision myself as being, and I have to somehow switch and, as you say, Gabe, throw out the playbook. So I think that's often a piece of it that we have to like always roll with. And yeah, Gabe, I think I was thinking the similarly as you, is that it's like we don't parent in a vacuum. We need a community. For me, I was part of this is on the Pacific Northwest. I was part of a parenting class when my first kid was very young, and what I took from the teachers was incredible. A lot of it was validating what I already felt or suspected, but a lot of it was also very different. And I was like, wow, that makes sense. I never would have thought of it like that. And it was the community too, of being with these other young parents that and that's where I found myself amongst all these moms and our infants, but I also think that it's so difficult to parent by yourself. And so if you have a partner or a co-parent, you have to negotiate that with the other person. And what I was thinking, Ted, in terms of the answer to your question is, it matters, the relationship that we have with our co-parent, whether we're just co-parenting, whether we have a relationship with them, or it's just a co-parenting relationship, or if we love them and we're married, whatever. That relationship is going to also determine to what degree how we believe in ourselves as a parent. And because if we have conflict with our co-parent, and I'm using co-parent as just the broadest term here, the other parent, right? If there's conflict in terms of just like we disagree about whether we should do it this way or that way, it calls into question. We start to question ourselves, like, oh, do I even know what I'm doing? And I think that's, sometimes it's helpful to turn to parenting books or other parents and try to figure out for ourselves what feels right. But but I think that trying to be on the same page as our co-parent is really important, not just because we're telling the same thing to our kid, but because it's so easy to doubt ourselves and to get into competitive parenting, which can be destructive as well. But it just reinforced in my mind what Gabe, you're saying, is that we parent as a part of a community, but then again, we also take from the community too, and some things that are not going to be helpful. Aaron, I think that it's fantastic in some ways that you feel that there's a bit of self-sacrifice that's involved with being a dad. I actually think that for most dads out there, and I hate stereotyping, but for a lot of dads, they're just not that invested, honestly. And self-sacrifice means I go to work and I make a lot of money and I have to like struggle to go to work, and that's my sacrifice. But there's no sacrifice in terms of like, I'll get up in the middle of the night with our kid. No, I have to go to work tomorrow, so I'm not going to. And I think that we get those kinds of, that's an influence on us because we're part of the larger community, and we hear other dads joking about how, they don't get up in the middle of the night, or diapers are disgusting, I don't like changing diapers, whatever it is. But we're going to be influenced from everything around us, whether it's our co-parent or the people we're just standing online, at the grocery store, and we watch them parenting. So we can't parent in isolation. We're always getting influences from everyone. But I think the more you can find your community that feels right for you. And Fidel, I was thinking about you too, in terms of trying to find a community out here. And I think it's hard. I think it's really tough, so like go to the family centers, that are, in the area, and see if you can connect to other parents. I know I did that, and I was looking for other parents to connect to. It's really tough to do so.
I have some additional questions, but let's pause for a second just to see if anyone in the kind of audience, has questions or comments or would like to add their thoughts. We'd love to hear you if you do, but you don't have to. But if you,
I see Cheryl has their hand up.
oh, great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Nice.
All right. Hello. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this whole event that you guys are having. And I will say I am coming to you as a single mom, and I really appreciate this because I actually have 2 boys, and I feel like I really needed like somewhere to direct them, like in the future when they become dads and stuff. I'm like, how I can't fill that in. Like, we need more stuff like this, like somebody said, there's all this stuff for single moms and everything, but what about the dads, or just everything for moms? What about dads, single dads, dads, just all kinds of dads. We really need it. And I'm actually a therapist with a private practice where I work primarily with women. So it's like, we need that for guys too, and I will say too, just coming from a perspective of my ex-husband, I can look back now and see the perspective, like from his perspective, he had so much pressure on him when we were like in financial difficulties and everything. Like one of you just mentioned like financial stuff, they're just seen as like, go be the breadwinner, all this kind of stuff. And I can say in our marriage, I feel like he really succumbed to a lot of that pressure. He ended up getting like involved in criminal activities and things like that, which is why I'm now a single mom. He's actually incarcerated right now. That's the only reason we got divorced, because he was like, well, I'm no good to you in here. Go move on with your life type of thing. That was years ago. But yeah, I just see how the pressure that was on him to like support a family. And we were young, like we married in our early 20s. We had 3 kids pretty quickly. And there was like all this financial pressure, and I feel like looking back, I can now see how he was like, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out. Because I feel like I got in the same boat when I became a single mom. It was like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out. So then I knew like that's all the stuff that was on his shoulders. That's why he was sometimes just like, I don't know what to do, you know what I mean? And I'm looking like, hey man, come on, we got to make this happen. Like make something happen, just not really realizing all the, like, I'm just adding to the pressure. And I can say I saw my mom doing that to my dad growing up. So it's like, oh my gosh, we could just get more understanding of that in our society and to be able to support men and support dads more, that would be great. And I mean, even it was down to the point to where my ex-husband, come to find out later, his family was kind of telling him things like, you don't have anything to offer her, you don't have a good job. Da, da, da. So I mean, all those messages. So like he's in this marriage trying to make this work, all this stuff, and it's no good. So please do more stuff like this. And I mean, I'm like over here, looking up stuff and bookmarking things that I can like give to my sons later, to help them out in their future. So thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your comments. Yeah. Wow.
I'd love to chime in. That touched me deeply. My father was also incarcerated and handled things with gangs to try to make his money, and it was the big reason that my mom and him separated. And drug use was one of the biggest reason that he wasn't able to stay there mentally. It's a lot to bring to anyone. And I could tell that in his space, he didn't have the support that he needed either. Um, and that can be a hole that goes down and changes behaviors deep. And one thing I'd love to circle back to is is like knowing what to do as a parent, right? Like it's hard to know this, and there's a few kind of scaffolding ideas that I handled as I approached it as a single dad. Is one, to try to put my ego aside as much as possible. I'm going to fail. Like that was the idea that was coming up, right? Like I'm going to make mistakes. That's fine. I'm not going to beat myself up over a mistake. It's going to happen and going to learn from it. And with that also comes with there's so many things I don't know. And the only way to get there is by learning and trying. Um, and I feel like this idea can apply more than just being a single parent, right? In a double live-in co-parent situation, um, that ego can come from like, oh, kiddo prefers mom more, kiddo prefers dad more. And there could be some like pain and hurt that comes along with that. But the next scaffolding piece that I bring along with that is persistence. If you care, if you're invested, persist. You want to be part of that child's life, persist, keep trying. That effort will shine. Uh, Even if it's not quite what you expect, like, oh, kiddo doesn't want to be with me 24/7 or anything, like whatever expectation you have, toss that aside. That's all ego. Be there for your kid. It means a lot, and also helps that feeling of second parent. You're there, you're trying, even if it's not hitting some expectation you have, you can know that you're trying.
Thanks. That's, such important kind of comments. And other any other kind of comments or questions people would like to kind of chime in with from the audience?
Yeah, I'll chime in. This is Fidel here. I grew up with both of my parents in a Latino community, very machista dad. He was around financially always. And they're still together, they're in their 60s, still together to this day, but never around emotionally. Can't remember the day where he took me to a soccer game. I know he was around, come at night, late night, working. But it was always my mom who was like the neutral nucleus of the family, you know. She would take us everywhere. We would do everything with her, you know. And I've always been in gray for like, well, it's better to have a father in the house financially than no father, which is kind of like, yeah, in a sense, as you get older, yes, you know, but then there's certain gaps that just were missed, you know, that don't have that connection. So I've done a lot of work emotionally about that with like some emotional intelligence courses to forgive, you know, and move on. But now that my little one's around, it's kind of like, okay, um, even today, like during Christmas, I go, Dad, why didn't you do this? Like, why did just not questioning him, but just answering questions that he can still answer while he's around, you know? And he didn't really answer them. I think he felt more like ashamed, but I'm just grateful that I still have him around to ask those questions. I'm not mad at him at 45 years old, you know? But it's just something, even like today when we went for breakfast, some old man in his 70s was like, "Oh, you're such a good dad." Because he saw me with a baby, like a backpack, changing my baby's diaper in the changing station. I'm just like, all right, cool, whatever, you know? Um, but that's it. I mean, I just kind of like my background and just what I want to change for my son growing up to be around, to have to provide both financial and emotional, you know, support.
Do you, just in following what, Evan said, do you find he is the son the child you expected or different?
I can't answer that. I mean, I'm just blessed that we have him. We went through a lot of IVF. I haven't even had a chance to think about all those things. Me and my wife been trying for the last 6 years, 7 years, and
Wow.
we figured that IVF was our process, and the challenge was with me. I didn't produce enough testosterone to be able to even get a sperm, so we got a sperm donor. So really, I'm just grateful that I can even hold them today, because I knew what that journey was like in my mid-20s, and she knew too when we first got together. So to be honest with you, I haven't even set that expectation of like
Mhm.
what he is or not. I'm just glad that he's just here.
Been doing well.
Yeah, and healthy. So that's important.
Yeah. Well, just a little peek. He looks so cozy with you.
Yeah.
All snuggled up, all snuggled up.
Yeah, he was crying, so I came down and I'm like, okay, let me put him down. Which is I kind of laughed at your remark where you said dads are better at putting him to sleep. So
But, they can be. They can be. It's
mom's good too.
right.
So that's my story.
Great. Well, thank
But
you.
yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you for
Fidel.
sharing.
I think you hit on something which I feel is like so important, and maybe it's because I'm a therapist and that's sort of, tends to be my focus, but like just showing up emotionally, that's so huge. And I think a lot of guys just struggle with that. And, what does it look like? It's going to be different for each person, but I think as long as you're like tuned into your kid and just, I forgot who said it, but just like really listening to your kid and just being responsive to whatever your kid is going through. Just showing up and showing up emotionally, you know, not just kicking a soccer ball, great, yeah. But and the way that I felt it to play out for me is not just to show up and like, how are you feeling, but also just share it myself. And I think that's just it's age appropriate, of course, but I think it's important and it feels good. So I just wanted to add that. But thank you, Fidel. Appreciate what you said.
No. Gabe, I, have been kind of thinking about how you have been talking eloquently about the different phases of being a parent. The phase of, when you're expecting, where you're engaging, kind of imagining about what the child is going to be like. And the initial phase of infancy, say the first 4 months, where basically the child runs the show. And then after 4 months, other things can be, but, they tap into kind of different abilities of us. And I think, as Evan was saying, how important it is for us to be able to kind of observe all of this and also have some compassion that we're not going to be great at all phases of parenting. We're not going to be not good at, some people are, really good at playing with preschool children. And other people just, it's just too boring. I mean, how many times can we open and close a door, and be excited about that? Or, or playing Pokemon or, whatever, or the, or just dealing with, the conflicts of, middle school kids, but recognizing that, but also having some compassion for ourselves with regard to that we're not going to be good at all phases of that. So, yeah, Aaron.
Someone, maybe Evan, mentioned the parent centers as resources. If I could go back in time, I would have definitely leaned on that. And the timing's actually funny because Gabe and I are going to be at the Northampton Parent Center tomorrow morning, just kind of holding court. They said, we'd love to have you come in as people drop in for the play group. You can tell them about your group. So we could see you tomorrow morning if you want. I'm going to stick their link in the chat if people want to check
Great.
that out if you're close to
Great.
Northampton.
Fantastic.
I
Well-
I just wanted to add, I wasn't a
Yeah.
dad, but I was a single mom. And you sort of feel like the solo mom can kind of fail as a dad and a mom, even though all three of my daughters are so successful and well established in their now young adult lives. But yeah, that link I put in the chat, it's just one of those podcasts. This one happened to have a series, and yeah, it was geared toward educating boys, but it made me really be grateful for today's workshop because it made me think about parenting in general, like from all these different angles, right? Whether it's how the principal of the school sees you or doesn't see you, how you're trying to parent, how the pastor or rabbi or somebody of a religious community sees you or doesn't see you trying your best or not, like that there were a lot of interesting points that came up. I mean, it's a free podcast, so for what it's worth,
Great.
it brought up some good memories and some not so good memories of parenting little kids. Yeah. But thank you for today. This was really awesome, and thank you for all the dads giving their perspectives. It's so needed and helpful. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Jan, also. So, well, thank you, everybody. It's really kind of a privilege to have a chance to kind of talk with you all. And, it's really just kind of a privilege. And frankly, I learned so much. So thank you so much for spending a part of your Sunday afternoon with us. So, great.
Thanks for hosting, Dr. Plimpton,
everyone.
and Jan,
Yeah.
and Nat. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.